Somewhere in the American West, there is a state that most travelers drive past without a second thought. The state where the Earth split open and NASA trained astronauts for the moon. Where a canyon plunges deeper than the Grand Canyon. Where a waterfall stands taller than Niagara. And where the largest wilderness in the lower 48 states has no roads, no cell towers, and no way out except by river. That state is Idaho. Most people hear the name and think of one thing: potatoes. But what lies beyond that reputation is something that researchers, adventurers, and historians have been quietly documenting for decades. A landscape so vast and so varied that it contains volcanic lava fields, high alpine lakes, hidden hot springs, underground river systems, sand dunes taller than any in North America, and ghost towns frozen in time since the 1800s. "36% of Idaho is national forest land, the highest percentage of any state in the nation, and yet somehow, Idaho remains one of the least visited states in the American West. In this documentary, we are going to change that, from the lunar surface of its ancient lava fields to the turquoise depths of its secret springs, from the peaks of the Sawtooth Mountains to the silver mines that built and broke entire communities. This is the Idaho that almost nobody talks about. And by the end, you will understand why that silence might be the most remarkable thing about it. Here is something most people do not realize about Idaho. Nobody is entirely sure where its name comes from. For years, it was widely believed that Idaho was a Shoshone word meaning gem of the mountains. But historians later discovered that a lobbyist named George Willing may have simply invented the word in the 1860s, presenting it to Congress as a native term, when in fact it might have had no meaning at all. Congress nearly named the territory Idaho before changing course and calling it Colorado instead. But the name stuck around, and when a new territory was formed in 1863, Idaho got its second chance. The irony is that the made-up name turned out to be accidentally perfect. Idaho is in every measurable sense a gem among states. It contains more wilderness than nearly any state in the lower 48. Its mountains reach above 10,000 feet. Its rivers carve through canyons that rank among the deepest on Earth, and its geological diversity stretches from volcanic moonscapes in the south to glacial lakes in the north. But the world does not know this. When travelers plan trips to the American West, they think of Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, Yosemite. Idaho sits between those famous names, quietly holding some of the most dramatic landscapes on the continent. And that is exactly what makes it different. Where other states have been transformed by tourism, Idaho has been preserved by its own anonymity. Locals have a saying in Idaho. They tell visitors the winters are terrible and the summers are worse. They say it with a grin, because the people who live here know exactly what they are protecting. Idaho keeps its secrets in plain sight, but the first one is not hidden in the mountains or buried beneath glacial lakes. It is spread across the desert floor, where the earth itself split open and never healed. In 1969, 4 NASA astronauts arrived in a remote stretch of central Idaho. They were not there for vacation. Alan Shepard, Edgar Mitchell, Joe Engel, and Eugene Cernan came to study the volcanic terrain at a place called Craters of the Moon. Their mission was to learn the basics of volcanic geology before walking on the actual lunar surface, NASA chose this location because at the time, it was the closest thing to the moon that existed on Earth. And standing there today, it is easy to understand why. Craters of the Moon National Monument and Preserve covers more than 1,100 square miles of basaltic lava fields, cinder cones and volcanic fissures. It sits along the Great Rift of Idaho, a 62-mile crack in the Earth's surface that contains some of the deepest open rift cracks ever documented. Some plunge more than 800 feet into the ground. The landscape was formed by 8 separate eruption phases over a span of 13,000 years. The most recent eruptions happened roughly 2,000 years ago, and geologists believe the next ones are coming. The volcanic system beneath this region is not extinct, it is only sleeping. The Shoshone Bannock people, who have lived in this region for thousands of years, carry their own explanation. Their legends speak of a great serpent, angered by lightning striking a mountain near the Snake River, who coiled across the land and left rivers of fire in its path. Archaeological evidence confirms that their ancestors likely witnessed the final eruptions. President Calvin Coolidge established the monument in 1924, describing it as a weird and scenic landscape peculiar to itself. Nearly a century later, that description still holds. Walking across the lava flows feels like stepping onto another planet. Black basalt stretches to the horizon. Cinder cones rise like ancient sentinels, and beneath the surface, lava tubes wind through the earth like hollow veins. "80% of the monument is designated wilderness, accessible only on foot. No water, no shelter, just the raw, unfiltered surface of a planet still building itself." Fire built this land, but water tore it apart, and the proof lies in a canyon so deep that it makes the Grand Canyon look like a crack in the sidewalk. When people think of the deepest canyon in America, most picture Arizona, the Grand Canyon, mile after mile of red rock. But the deepest river gorge in North America is not in Arizona. It is in Idaho. Hell's Canyon plunges nearly 8,000 feet from the peaks of the Seven Devils Mountains to the surface of the Snake River below. That is roughly 2,000 feet deeper than the Grand Canyon at its most extreme point. And while the Grand Canyon receives over 6 million visitors each year, Hell's Canyon remains largely unknown. There are no shuttle buses here, no visitor centers on the rim, no gift shops selling postcards, just raw, staggering depth. The canyon forms the border between Idaho and Oregon, carved over millions of years by the relentless force of the Snake River. Geologists have documented layers of rock in the canyon walls that span hundreds of millions of years of Earth's history, and archaeologists have found evidence of human habitation here, dating back at least 15,000 years, making it one of the longest continuously inhabited places on the continent. The canyon is now part of the Hell's Canyon National Recreation Area, which stretches across both states. Hikers, rafters, and horseback riders can explore it, but the terrain is punishing. Summer temperatures at the river level can exceed 100 degrees. The trails are steep and exposed, and the Snake River itself runs wild through sections of serious whitewater. For those willing to make the journey, the reward is solitude on a scale that barely exists anymore in the American West. Researchers have documented bighorn sheep, mountain goats, black bears, and eagles throughout the canyon, and the night skies here are among the darkest in the lower 48. Lewis and Clark passed near this region during their famous expedition in the early 1800s. They never made it through the canyon itself. The terrain was too extreme, even for them. Hell's Canyon swallows light and sound and scale, but the Snake River did not stop carving here. Further along its path, it drops over a ledge that stands taller than Niagara, and almost nobody knows its name. There is a waterfall in southern Idaho that stands 212 feet tall, that is 36 feet higher than Niagara Falls. Its name is Shoshone Falls, and it stretches across the Snake River Canyon in a thundering curtain of white water that has been drawing travelers since the 1800s. Early pioneers on the Oregon Trail described the falls with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Here, in the middle of what appeared to be an endless desert, the earth suddenly dropped away and the river exploded into mist. Historians have noted that 19th century travelers called Shoshone Falls one of the great natural wonders of the American West. But unlike Niagara, it never became a household name. It never got the hotels, the casinos, or the international fame, and in many ways that is exactly why it remains so powerful to witness today. The falls are located near the city of Twin Falls, which sits along the rim of the Snake River Canyon. The canyon itself is a spectacle. The Perrin Bridge spans the gorge at a height of nearly 500 feet, and it is one of the only bridges in America where base jumping is legal year-round. On any given day, travelers report seeing parachutes drifting down into the canyon, while the falls thunder in the distance. For the more adventurous, kayakers can make a 4-hour paddle upstream from a launch point in Twin Falls, portaging over Pillar Falls along the way, to reach the base of Shoshone Falls from below. Those who have made the trip describe standing at the bottom of the falls as one of the most humbling experiences in the state. The Snake River Canyon also holds a place in American pop culture. In 1974, Evel Knievel attempted to jump across the canyon on a steam-powered rocket near Twin Falls. He did not make it, but the launch site is still there, a strange monument to ambition carved into the canyon rim. Shoshone Falls thunders across the canyon in full view of anyone who comes looking. But some of Idaho's most extraordinary water is not visible at all. It moves in silence, deep beneath the desert, and surfaces only where the rock allows it to breathe. In the high desert of southern Idaho, the landscape looks parched: dry sagebrush, brown rock, flat plains stretching to the horizon. It is the last place anyone would expect to find Caribbean blue water, but that is exactly what is hiding here. Blue Heart Springs sits inside the Snake River Canyon, near the town of Hagerman. It is a small cove of impossibly clear turquoise water framed by black basalt canyon walls. The spring bubbles up from deep underground, fed by an ancient aquifer that runs beneath the entire Snake River plain. The water is so clear that kayakers can see straight to the bottom, even in the deepest sections. From above, the spring forms a near-perfect heart shape, earning it a name that sounds made up but is entirely real. The spring can only be reached by boat. There is no road, no parking lot, no sign. Travelers who discover it often describe the experience as surreal. A pocket of tropical blue water surrounded by volcanic rock in the middle of the Idaho desert. But Blue Heart Springs is only one piece of a much larger hidden water system. A few miles away, the Thousand Springs area reveals something even more extraordinary. Here, waterfalls pour directly out of the canyon walls, cascading hundreds of feet down sheer rock faces. These are not fed by rivers or streams above. The water emerges from inside the rock itself, filtered through layers of volcanic basalt from the Lost River Range, over 100 miles to the northeast. The rivers of the Lost River Range literally vanish underground, absorbed into porous lava rock, and reappear here as springs and waterfalls. Box Canyon Springs Nature Preserve, tucked away near the town of Wendell, is one of the most striking examples. It is America's 11th largest spring, pushing an estimated 118,000 gallons of water per minute into a pristine blue pool hidden below the desert surface. Visitors walk a short trail through what looks like dry farmland, only to arrive at the edge of a canyon and discover a turquoise oasis below. Idaho hides water beneath deserts and blue springs inside black canyons, but further north, the mountains reveal themselves completely, and they are breathtaking. There is a mountain range in central Idaho that many experienced hikers and climbers consider the most beautiful in the American West. It does not carry the fame of the Tetons or the Cascades, but those who have seen it say it rivals anything on the continent. It is called the Sawtooth Range. The name comes from its silhouette. Jagged granite peaks rise in sharp, serrated lines against the sky, resembling the teeth of a giant saw blade. More than 40 of these peaks exceed 10,000 feet. Below them, over 300 alpine lakes are scattered across the valleys and basins, their waters ranging from deep emerald to pale glacial blue. The Sawtooth National Recreation Area protects over 750,000 acres of this landscape. At the foot of the Sawtooth sits the tiny town of Stanley, Idaho. With a year-round population of fewer than 100 people, Stanley is one of the coldest towns in the lower 48. Winter temperatures regularly plunge below -30 degrees, and yet travelers who arrive in summer find a place that feels almost dreamlike. Wildflower meadows run up to the base of granite walls. The Salmon River winds through the valley, and the air is so clean and thin that the stars at night seem close enough to touch. The Sawtooth Scenic Byway, which connects Stanley to the resort town of Ketchum through Highway 75, is widely regarded as one of the most spectacular drives in America. The road follows the Salmon River through narrow canyons before climbing into wide alpine valleys with unobstructed views of the entire range. Travelers who have driven it often say no photograph can capture what it feels like to round a curve and see the full wall of Sawtooth peaks appear without warning. Redfish Lake, one of the most popular destinations in the recreation area, earned its name from the sockeye salmon that once turned its waters red during spawning season. Those runs declined dramatically over the decades, and the lake's name now serves as a reminder of what once was and what conservation efforts are working to restore. The Sawtooths guard Idaho's wild interior like a granite wall, but just beyond their southern slopes, a valley opened its doors to Hollywood, to skiers, and to a Nobel Prize-winning writer who came for the mountains and never left. In 1936, a railroad executive named Averell Harriman had a vision. He wanted to build America's first destination ski resort. Modeled after the alpine lodges of Europe, he sent an Austrian count named Felix Schafgotsch across the American West to find the perfect location. After surveying mountains from California to Colorado, the count arrived in the small Idaho town of Ketchum. He sent a telegram back to Harriman with a simple message: "This is it." Sun Valley Resort opened that same year, and it changed American skiing forever. It was the first resort in the world to install a chairlift, adapted from a mechanism used to load bananas onto freight ships. Hollywood celebrities arrived almost immediately. Clark Gable, Marilyn Monroe, and Gary Cooper all spent time on the mountain, but the most famous resident of the Ketchum area was not a movie star. It was Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway first visited Sun Valley in 1939 and returned many times over the following decades. He worked on For Whom the Bell Tolls during his stays. Eventually, he made Ketchum his permanent home. He loved the hunting, the fishing, and the solitude that the Idaho mountains provided. He is buried in a modest grave in the Ketchum Cemetery, beneath a simple headstone. Fans and admirers still visit the site, leaving coins, flowers, and sometimes half-finished bottles of wine as a tribute. Today, Sun Valley remains one of the premier ski destinations in America, anchored by Bald Mountain, which rises over 9,000 feet. But the valley is far more than a winter resort. Summer brings hiking, mountain biking, fly fishing, and a thriving arts and music festival scene. Sun Valley shines with glamour and alpine light, but just to the north, the mountains swallow every trace of civilization, and the river that runs through them earned a name that warns you not to follow it. In the heart of Idaho, there is a wilderness so vast that it contains more land than Yellowstone National Park. It has no paved roads, no permanent buildings, and once you enter its interior, the only way out is by trail, by horseback, or by river. Its name is the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness, and it is the largest contiguous wilderness area in the lower 48 states. The numbers alone are staggering. 2.3 million acres of protected land, over 2,600 miles of maintained trails, and yet 1.5 million acres within its boundaries have no trails at all. Just unbroken forest, granite ridges, and river canyons stretching to the horizon in every direction. The wilderness is named after Idaho Senator Frank Church, who served as the Senate floor sponsor for the Wilderness Act of 1964. That landmark legislation protected 9 million acres of American land. Church spent his career fighting for wild places, and in 1980, his efforts culminated in the Central Idaho Wilderness Act, which formally created the River of No Return Wilderness. In 1984, Congress renamed it in his honor. President Reagan signed the measure less than 4 weeks before Church passed away at the age of 59. The Salmon River, which gives the wilderness its dramatic nickname, runs through the northern section. Early settlers called it the River of No Return because its current was so powerful that boats could travel downstream but had no way to fight back upstream. The middle fork of the Salmon, which cuts through the wilderness for over 100 miles, is considered by experienced rafters to be one of the greatest whitewater rivers on Earth. Wolves were reintroduced here in 1995 because of the area's remoteness and abundance of prey. Mountain lions, black bears, elk, moose, bighorn sheep and wolverines all inhabit the wilderness. Small bush planes are permitted to land on a handful of primitive dirt airstrips left over from before the wilderness designation, making some areas accessible only by air. The River of No Return is Idaho's beating heart of wildness, but on the western edge of this vast interior, a quieter kind of mountain paradise waits on the shore of a glacial lake. There is a small resort town in west-central Idaho that sits at the southern tip of a glacial lake, surrounded by the Payette National Forest. Its name is McCall. Its population hovers around 3,700 people, and travelers who stumble upon it often describe the same reaction: disbelief that a place this beautiful can be this unknown. Payette Lake covers over 5,000 acres of pristine glacial water at an elevation of just over 5,000 feet. The lake was carved by glaciers millions of years ago and sits in the upper drainage basin of the Payette River. In summer, when the water level drops, the trunks of ancient submerged trees emerge from the surface, a haunting reminder of the forests that once stood here before the glaciers came. The town itself has the feel of a mountain village. Downtown McCall is lined with small restaurants, outdoor outfitters, and cafes with views of the lake and the surrounding peaks. Ponderosa State Park, which occupies a 1,000-acre peninsula jutting into the lake, offers miles of forested trails with views across the water to the mountains beyond. Payette Lake also has its own local legend. Since the early 1900s, residents have reported sightings of a large creature in the water. They named it Charlie. In the 1940s, a local newspaper even offered a $40 reward to whoever came up with the best name for the creature. Whether Charlie is real or not, the legend has become part of McCall's identity. Beyond the lake, McCall serves as a gateway to some of Idaho's most spectacular backcountry. The Warren Wagon Road, originally built during the gold rush to transport ore from mountain mines, leads deep into the wilderness. Brundage Mountain, a small independent ski resort just north of town, is known for receiving some of the heaviest snowfall in the state. What makes McCall different from more famous mountain towns is its pace. There is no rush here, no crowds fighting for space, just a lake that mirrors the sky and a town that has learned to let the landscape speak for itself. McCall holds still where other mountain towns keep spinning, but further north, the forests thicken, the air turns cool and heavy with cedar, and the lakes grow so deep they once held Cold War secrets beneath their surface. In the northern panhandle of Idaho, the landscape shifts. The dry canyons and volcanic plains of the south give way to dense forests of cedar, fir and pine. Rivers widen into massive bodies of water, and two lakes dominate the region with a scale and beauty that travelers often compare to Switzerland. Lake Coeur stretches 25 miles through forested mountains, its waters so clear that early French fur traders named it after the local indigenous people whom they called Coeur d'Alene, a term that roughly translates to heart of the Oreille, describing their sharp trading skills. The town of Coeur d'Alene, which sits on the northern shore, has grown into one of Idaho's most popular destinations. A floating boardwalk extends along the waterfront, resorts line the hillside, and in summer, the lake fills with boats, paddleboards, and swimmers. But the true giant of northern Idaho lies a short drive to the northeast. Lake Oreille is Idaho's largest lake. It stretches 43 miles, with 111 miles of shoreline, and it plunges to depths exceeding 1,150 feet, making it one of the deepest lakes in the entire United States. That depth is not just a geological curiosity. During the Cold War, the U.S. Navy recognized that Lake Oreille's deep, cold waters and unique acoustic properties made it an ideal location for testing submarine technology. A naval research facility was established at the lake's Farragut State Park, originally built as a World War II naval training station. For decades, the Navy quietly tested submarine models and sonar systems in the lake, far from the ocean and far from prying eyes. The town of Sandpoint, which sits on the lake's northwestern shore, was named America's most beautiful small town. It is framed by the Selkirk and Cabinet mountain ranges, and nearby Schweitzer Mountain is the largest ski resort in Idaho. Northern Idaho gleams with alpine lakes and mountain light, but just 36 miles east of Sandpoint, the landscape darkens. A narrow valley holds the ruins of a billion-dollar empire built underground, and the ghosts of that era still linger. In 1885, a down-on-his-luck prospector named Noah Kellogg set out along the South Fork of the Coeur d'Alene River with a borrowed donkey and a handful of tools. According to local legend, his donkey wandered off one morning, and Kellogg found the animal standing near a hillside, streaked with galena, a mineral that signals rich deposits of silver and lead beneath the surface. That hill would become the Bunker Hill and Sullivan Mine, and that discovery would transform a quiet Idaho valley into one of the most productive mining districts in world history. Over the next century, the Silver Valley produced more than 1 billion ounces of silver, along with millions of tons of lead, zinc, and copper. 90 mines operated in the region at its peak. The district was home to the largest underground mine in the United States, with over 150 miles of tunnels. The town of Wallace, at the valley's center, still has its entire downtown listed on the National Register of Historic Places. But the valley's story is not just one of wealth, it is also one of tragedy. A vicious conflict between miners and mine owners in the 1890s involved bombings, kidnappings, and federal intervention. In 1910, a catastrophic wildfire burned 3 million acres across northern Idaho and Montana, destroying much of Wallace and Kellogg and killing 87 people. A U.S. Forest Service ranger named Ed Pulaski saved 39 lives by leading his crew into an abandoned mine tunnel as the fire raged above. In 1972, a fire inside the Sunshine Mine killed 91 miners in one of the worst mining disasters in American history. Today, the Silver Valley has reinvented itself. The Bunker Hill mine is closed, but the gondola that once carried miners up the mountain now takes skiers and hikers to the slopes of Silver Mountain Resort. And the route of the Hiawatha, a 15-mile rail-to-trail bike path through the Bitterroot Mountains, takes riders through old railroad tunnels and over towering trestles with views across the mountains of Idaho and Montana. A town founded by a jackass, as one famous sign in Kellogg reads, has become something far more enduring. But Idaho's deepest roots reach back long before the silver and the railroads, back to a time when the only records were carved into stone. Long before miners and railroads arrived, Idaho was a crossroads. For thousands of years, indigenous peoples including the Shoshone, Bannock, Nez Perce, and Coeur d'Alene lived across the region, following seasonal patterns of hunting, fishing, and gathering. Archaeological evidence at sites like Celebration Park, Idaho's only archaeological park, reveals petroglyphs and artifacts dating back 12,000 years. These are among the oldest traces of human life in North America. In the 1800s, Idaho became one of the most critical corridors of westward expansion. The Oregon Trail, the route that carried hundreds of thousands of pioneers across the continent, passed directly through southern Idaho. At Three Island Crossing near the town of Glens Ferry, wagon trains faced one of the trail's most dangerous river crossings. Many overturned, some were lost. A state park now preserves the site, and visitors can stand on the banks of the Snake River and look out at the islands where pioneers gambled their lives for a westward passage. Further south, the City of Rocks National Reserve holds one of the most hauntingly beautiful landscapes in the state. Massive granite formations, some towering the equivalent of 70 stories, rise from the high desert. These formations were landmarks along the California Trail, and pioneers carved their names and dates into the rock as they passed through. Some of those inscriptions, dating back to the 1840s, are still visible today. And then there is Idaho's contribution to the modern age. Near the town of Arco, the experimental breeder reactor number 1, known as EBRI, became the first nuclear reactor in history to generate usable electricity in 1951. The test was simple, 4 light bulbs, but the implication was enormous. The reactor is now a museum, open to visitors who can walk among the machinery that quietly changed the trajectory of human civilization. Idaho contains 12,000 years of human history, from ancient petroglyphs to nuclear firsts, from pioneer inscriptions to moon training grounds, and through all of it, the land remains The road through the Sawtooth Valley catches the last of the evening light. Mountains turn from granite gray to copper, then to deep violet. The river below carries the same water it has carried for millennia, and in every direction the land stretches without interruption. Idaho does not announce itself. It never has. It holds the deepest gorge on the continent, and does not put it on a billboard. It trained astronauts for the moon, and barely mentions it. It produced over 1 billion ounces of silver, and let the mines go quiet when the silver was gone. This is a state that contains volcanic moonscapes and alpine meadows, desert canyons hiding turquoise springs and forests so vast they have no trails, a river that earned the name No Return because the current only flows one way, and a wilderness large enough to swallow a national park whole. People who come here often struggle to explain what they found, not because Idaho lacks words, but because the experience is not about any single place. It is about what happens when an entire landscape has been left to exist on its own terms, without the noise, without the crowds, without the pressure to become something other than what it already is. Every year, more travelers discover Idaho, and every year, the people who already love it hope the world takes its time, because the mountains are patient, the rivers keep running, and Idaho will be here, exactly as it has always been, waiting for those who are willing to look beyond the name. The last light fades behind the sawtooths, the stars begin to emerge, and somewhere in the darkness, a wolf calls across the wilderness, its voice carrying through a silence that Idaho has protected for thousands of years.